welcome back to my channel, Dance Life Love TV, where we embrace life, culture, faith, and so much more. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I stopped idolizing marriage. So let me just clarify, if you clicked on this video thinking that this is going to be me bashing marriage and talking about why you shouldn't get married and talking down about marriage, you came to the wrong video, because it ain't going down like that. This is primarily going to be a faith-based video, but there are a lot of helpful and practical tips in this video that's going to help you in your situation if you are idolizing marriage. And this is meaning if you are someone that's been longing to be married and you've been single for quite a while and you found yourself idolizing marriage to where you have kind of like this false reality of what it is or what it should be, and you also are becoming like impatient and you don't really know like what to do with all these feelings and the stuff you're having. I'm going to talk about that today. So for all my Christian women and men, this is a great video for you. Just talking about some of the steps that I've taken that has helped me to stop idolizing marriage and to be comfortable and happy within my single season. So before I jump into the tips and the things that I did to stop idolizing marriage, I do want to talk about a couple of things that influence that idolization, there we go, which would be social constructs, cultural views, and particularly the social construct within church. I'm going to keep it all the way 100. A lot of churches make it seem as though marriage is the end all be all, and really don't have a lot available for single believers. You can go to a lot of churches and just see like there's either no program for singles, or they just don't even think about singles in general. It's usually everything is focused on married individuals and marriage and how to improve your marriage and how this and raising kids, and all that is very much important. But what about those that aren't married, that have never been married, that don't have children? Like, what are we supposed to do? Just be? So I'm not downing marriage, and I'm not saying that marriage, they shouldn't be talking about marriage in church, because marriage is definitely very important. Marriage was created by God to not only glorify and edify God, but also for us to love each other and be God's example of love on an earthly level towards each other within that holy union. I'm not saying that, they shouldn't talk about marriage and how to improve marriage and all the hardships and stuff that come with marriage. But while you're in your single season, you need to be ministered to as well. And so I feel like churches intend to always push that and focus on that. And it's almost like you can kind of feel like you just like kind of a nobody in church. Like, okay, if I'm not married, then my needs don't matter. If I'm not married, then no one's going to really minister to me. So I definitely think it's something that is a huge issue within a lot of churches. And this can also add into almost the sense of like a pressure to hurry up and like find somebody and get married so you can be a part of the marriage crew at church. The other construct that we want to look at is culturally. And some people grow up in cultures where marriage is a huge thing. If you're not married by the time you're like 25, people are kind of looking at you like, people in your family are kind of looking at you strange, like, you're not married yet, like what's going on? Like, you're almost 30 or you're almost 40, like what's going on? I actually know a woman who is she's of Mexican descent, and she was talking about like one of her cousins or something that got married, and her cousin was like 36, and like the family was kind of looking at her like, you're old though, like, and just kind of in a sense down and kind of coming down on her for like being married, and she's all happy and she's all like, oh, I just want to spend time with my husband, and she's super happy. But the family is kind of almost trying to make her feel bad about it because of her age. And it's like, 36 is not old. So I want to say that to encourage you guys that 36 is not old. We tend to put a time on well, actually no, we do, we put, as human beings, we put time on everything, and God's timing is not our timing. So when God decides that there is a better and more appropriate time for you to be married, for you to move, for you to get a job, a certain kind of job, for you to go travel to a certain kind of place, like, God will decide that. And God's timing is just perfect timing. When things happen in his timing, it just feels like there's so much peace you have on the inside. So don't let anyone, make you feel as though, oh, you're just like, you're old and you're this and that. Okay, like, first of all, let's go back to the Old Testament and look at how old some of them were, like having children and doing all the things they were doing. Like, they were having a very active life in their age. They were like 80s and like all the way 80 plus. Like, it was like, I think somewhere like in their hundreds. So yeah, just be glad, you're not having babies and getting married in your hundreds like how they were doing. So I just say this to say, like, our timing, no, like, when it comes to certain things in life, like, we have to be patient and be patient with God. So, don't allow constructs within church, and don't allow cultural constructs to like make you feel like you got to be rushed, because this is going to get you, a bit anxious and a bit antsy, and then it's just gonna weigh in and do a number kind of on your mental health and emotional health, and you're gonna feel like you need to rush and that you need to go out and find somebody right away and get married within a year or 2 years and all that. And there's nothing wrong with having plans and having those aspirations, but just know that God knows what we need, and he'll always bless us with what we need, not always what we want. And I'm not saying that, he won't give us parts of what we want, but just leave it in God's hands. That's all. So I just wanted to get that stuff quickly out of the way before I jump into the list. So the first thing that I did to stop idolizing marriage was I stopped watching How I Met My Husband videos on YouTube, How I Met My Wife, how God brought us together, how God did this, how God did that. The reason why I stopped watching that is because over time I started to notice that a lot of these videos were just very embellished. Like, it just seemed like they were just trying so hard to make it so spiritual and so like, oh, God and God. Like, I literally watched a video where the whole time the wife was just like, and God and God. And I'm not trying to make fun of her or anything, but this video had like over 1 million views, and they had like the spiritual music playing in the back, and I'm just like, okay. And then as they were telling the story, it's just, everything just seems so like fairy tale-y. And I just want to also say, be very careful with people telling you their story of like how they met, and telling you their stories of like how God brought them together, because I have definitely noticed a difference of when Christians are saying, like, talking about their story, like they always try to like make it as spiritual as possible. And it's like, you ain't got to do that. Like, if y'all met at the mall, just say you met at the mall. Like, you don't need to have like all these different like factors that you are trying to like use to make it seem like this was spiritual, and God sent my husband down from the sky and he just appeared. And you guys know, if you watch these videos, you know what I'm talking about. So be very careful about that, because I was watching a lot of those. I was watching a lot because it was just on my mind. I really wanted to be married, and to be honest, my view and opinion of marriage, like, it was just for selfish reasons. Like, it wasn't a healthy view of marriage. It just, like, to be honest, it just kind of like made light of it, and it wasn't very serious. I think it was just more on the lines of just being with someone. I do want to talk about briefly how I got to this place where I started idolizing marriage. And about 2 years ago, it was like 2017, I was part of a singles group at church. I was part of a singles group at church, and 2017 was fine, but then 2018 rolled around, and the group just started booming. It grew. A lot of people were getting really fed from the group. You know, we would have like a little Bible chat at the church after service, and come 2018, you started to notice that people were starting to date within the group, and people were starting to, you know, get booed up. So this kind of created a very strange dynamic, because it's like people that you were hanging out with and going to different like little singles events with, now they're basically with their boo who's also in the group, and it's like it just created this weird energy. And eventually that group ended towards the end of like 2018, just because of like changes at the church and all of that. And so it changed. But that's even a situation where I'm just like, that was, to me, that was God, because God already knew like, okay, this is kind of going in a different direction, and it's kind of time to start pulling the plug on this. Not saying that, you know, dating people at church isn't something, it's something you shouldn't do. You can't stop grown adults from dating each other. But you have to think, you know, if you are single and, you know, single, never been married, no kids, anything like that, and you're around that energy, like it can have you thinking about it. So this is what was happening to me, because I had already was going through a situation where before 2018, the year prior, like towards the end, I had a crush on someone at church. I had a huge crush on someone at church. Great man of God. Like he really, truly loved the Lord and was definitely serious about his walk with Christ. But it was just like, every time we would try to talk, like I just felt like he was just nervous or like uncomfortable. And so it never went anywhere. So he eventually like started dating someone else at church, and now they're married. And you have to think like that's already something that is like, okay, really? Because I was a bit hurt by that. It took a second to get over it, you know, just mainly when he started dating someone else. That's when it was like, oh man, you know, really? But I say that and mention this because this is part of why I started getting kind of obsessive and a little bit obsessive about the idea of marriage and idolizing it. Because to be very honest, I was coming from a place of insecurity, feeling insecure, because it's like, well, what's going on? What's going on in the situation? You know, it's not like, you know, this is a guy who's serious, you know, about his walk with Christ and all of that. And the thing about it is, just because somebody is a good person and serious about their walk with Christ, that doesn't mean that they're right for you. And that's something that is a hard pill to swallow, because it's easy when you have a terrible situation where the person's terrible and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You can justify like it going nowhere or nothing working out with that situation. But when it's somebody where you're like, they're good people, it's like, I don't know why this didn't, you know, God, why didn't you, you know, allow this to unfold? But it didn't. And I don't know. And maybe on his end, maybe he prayed about it and got a no. I know he definitely prayed about his relationships based on just other things that I heard said before from this particular individual. That he definitely prays about everything in his life. So you have to look, I had to look at that too, that maybe God told him like, no, like, she's not your wife, keep it pushing, like don't even try. So I was coming off of that, and then in singles there was an individual that I just thought, hey, seems like we both are hitting it off. It seems like, you know, we both are equally attracted to each other and getting to know each other a little bit more. This is the particular individual where I avoided what could have been a love triangle. And I did mention this in the how to get entangled video. and I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about that story or not. It's still up in air, but we'll see. But that was another situation after that I was dealing with. So then I was just like, okay, God, like, what's going on? I mean, I remember even going and praying, getting prayer, and the woman who prayed for me, she was just like, the enemy will always send counterfeits, and before you get your blessing and all of that, which is very true. Counterfeits will appear before God really does bless you. And so I'm coming off of that and just kind of the emotions off of that, and it was hard. It started to become really difficult to be in a group and to be at church and to just see like people getting booed up and running around with their bae, and it's not happening for you. The next thing I did was I stopped following certain people on Instagram and Facebook. And these were like friends of friends, people within the group. And I'm going to tell you why, because later on, as we started getting into 2018, kind of like beginning and mid of 2019, a lot of these people who started dating, they decided to get married. So it's like now I'm seeing weddings. And I'm not ashamed to say that I was not happy. I just was not in a good place. I wasn't happy for them, and I was envious. I was really envious and jealous because I felt like, well, God, like, my heart, like, you see me, like, what's going on? How come, like, you didn't bless me with this? We've all been there. And what I want to say is, like, it's not wrong to feel the emotion of envy or jealousy, but it's wrong to stay there. So it's wrong for you to like live in that place, as in anything, as anger or any negative emotion, for you to like live in that place and kind of set up shop and set your whole tent up in there and everything. That's where the problem lies, is because the more you feed it, the worse it gets. And so in order to not feed that, and in order for me to have more of a clear head about the situation, I had to unfollow these people. I had to just say, you know what? I can't be seeing all these like weddings on my feed. I can't just be looking at this, because it's making, like, I'm feeling insecure. I'm starting to feel some kind of way about it, because again, that's what we do. We're like, it's not me. And I know there's people out there that will say, well, you can always look at that as the glass half full, as in, if all that's happening around you, then that means that it's your turn and you're going to be the next one. And that's great. That's great and all. It's very positive. There's people like that are out there, and that's their first thought, and it's very positive. But if you ain't like that, let me tell you something. It's okay. It is okay that you feel that, and there's nothing wrong, but you have to then figure out how to manage it, and how are you going to deal with that? Because again, like I said, it reveals something about you, and it reveals an insecurity there. And it also shows us how much that we're not trusting God in the moment, that we're really not trusting him, because now we're just kind of like doubting God. And you have to be careful, because the enemy will use things like that and almost kind of like dangle it in your face, like, see that? Almost like that commercial where he's like dangling the dollar and saying, oh, you gotta be quicker than that, you gotta be faster than that. That's basically what the enemy will do, and it'll get you like very much in your feelings, to where like you're doubting God. And once you get to that point, that lets you know that you're totally off track and something's wrong. But that was the second thing I did, was I stopped following these individuals, because I needed to detox. That's the whole point of it, is to detox from it. And it's okay, because we know that social media is not, it's not good for your mental health. That's been proven, that it has a lot of negative, it can have a negative impact on your emotional and mental health, because you're seeing what other people are doing. You start doing a comparison between you and them and how your life is, and you can't do that. So that's the next thing, was unfollowing friends of friends and people who are, getting married and all of that. That's what I did. And I had to do that. And I think it was 2019 I had to do that. The other thing is you got to stop following bridal accounts. So I didn't follow bridal accounts, but I know there's people who do. And you have to stop following these bridal accounts because you're seeing wedding dresses and you're seeing these beautiful arrangements and you're seeing all this stuff unfold and beautiful brides, but you're not in that season. And some may say, well, I just want to, get that in my head so I can kind of speak it into existence and do all. Well, there's a problem here. If it's affecting you negatively, then no, you shouldn't be doing that. If it's not affecting you negatively and you just like looking at that stuff, then, so be it, whatever, it's not affecting you. But be very careful of how it is and really take an internal assessment of how is this affecting my mental health? How do I feel? How is this affecting my walk with God? How is this affecting me spiritually? So that's why you have to be very, very careful about what you're feeding into your eye gate, ear gate, just like the word tells us, and particularly this with bridal stuff. And for me, I find more excitement in just waiting until I'm in that season. Like when I'm engaged and it's time to start planning a wedding and it's time to look at all that, that's when I'll start looking at bridal stuff, bridal magazines, going to bridal expos, looking at venues, all that stuff, because I'll be in that season. And that will be the perfect time for it, and it'll be the appropriate time for it, because in a sense, if you're spending a lot of your time doing that now as a single, you're kind of wasting your singleness by looking at marriage stuff. And it's not even really marriage stuff, you're just looking at wedding stuff. And that's a key point right there, because there's a lot of people that are prepared for a wedding, but they're not prepared for a marriage. They haven't done the work to know how to navigate through a marriage. It's just, oh, the wedding. The wedding is just one thing and one big ceremony. And when it's done, you got a real marriage you have to walk through every single day. So the best thing for you to do is read material on marriages and like the real deal about marriage, not any fluffy kind of stuff, but actually read about that. That's a good thing to do in your singleness, just to get an idea. You don't have to get too heavy in it, because it can distract you from other things that you should be doing as a single. That is very fulfilling. But definitely kind of dive a little bit, but then as you see that you're starting to enter into that season when God finally does bring your man of God, your woman of God, once you are maybe in that phase where, okay, this is a serious relationship and I can see myself marrying this person, then we start kind of reading those materials and getting prepared and ready for that. So it's just waiting for the appropriate season to dive into that. Something else I do want to add to Instagram and the YouTube is, okay, please stop following. I followed a couple and then I had to unfollow them. Stop following these folks that are self-proclaimed, self-made, they're giving themselves the title of being this perfect couple, like, and the perfect spiritual couple. They got it all together. They got the house. They got the dogs. They've given themselves the title of power couple. I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I honestly cannot stand seeing these videos anymore. I can't stand seeing these videos, seeing these people on Instagram. Like, I can't stand seeing them, because it's just regular folks that want to be celebrities so bad. And this is even Christians that are like pumping their relationship up like it's so spiritual, it's so holy, like, look at us, look at us, look at us, look at us. You need to be like us, because that's basically everything they're saying and doing. That's basically the message that's getting across, is you need to be like us. And it's like, who said that you was in charge though? Like, who said that? It's kind of like, who gave you that power and authority to like try to be that in somebody's life? Be careful, y'all, because nobody's relationship is perfect. I actually made a video about this, of why I hate the hashtags body goals and relationship goals, and I'll actually link it up here so you can click on it and watch that. But I talked about that because some of these folks are just doing the most, and there's so many people doing this that it like makes you kind of wonder like what's really going on here, because this ain't God. Like, this is not God. This is not what his will for us, that we're out here like trying to showboat and show off our relationship as if like it's so holy and it's so spiritual, and we don't have any problems, and we everything in our life is just right and it's just perfect, and you should just strive to be like us. And it doesn't help that a lot of people like this have folks gassing them up too. So it's like you got to be mindful of all the people, even their fans and people who watch these folks and gas these folks up like this and be like, oh my gosh, I pray God sends me a man like that, or a wife like that. And it's like, no, like you just need to focus on your own journey and your own walk with God, and know that some of these stories are embellished, just like people on Instagram are doing highlight reels. They're doing highlight reels too. Just because they're saying they're Christian or they are Christian does not mean that they're not doing the same thing, doing a highlight reel. And they're just basically trying to show you all the good stuff and put on this image so you can continue to follow them and continue to contribute to whatever they got going on. But anyways, off of that, so the next thing I did after cutting out all that social media and following certain accounts and all that, the next thing I did was I started going on dates with God. And then of course, singles group was done and gone. It was just done. So there was no more kind of being within that energy and being around that. I know some people might be like, well, why would you keep going if you were feeling like that? Well, the reason why I did is because God led me to, because I did stop going for a little bit just because of that and other situations with that avoided love triangle thing. And I felt myself falling into isolation, and God was like, no, like go back, because you still have good relationships with a lot of people there. There was a lot of fruitfulness in the group. We were learning a lot of great things, and a lot of really great concepts. So I don't want to give the wrong idea that people think, oh, this group was so horrible and people were just dating each other and it was just a mess. No, it was one of those things where it kind of was a natural progression that you're in a group, and the longer you're around each other, romances can happen, and they often do happen. But that doesn't negate the fact that it does create a weird dynamic, whether you're at church, whether you're at work, at school, no matter what, it does create a weird dynamic within the group. And added to that, I want to also say I changed services that I went to. I even went that far. But at that time, I think I was going to like the third service. That was a little bit later. And I don't know, it was just like everybody around just seemed like it was just like young couples and people like getting engaged and people like on the fast track to get married. And I know that, trust me, I know that now, that those are things that the enemy will use to try to make you feel like, oh, it's everybody. And it's like, no, it's not everybody. Like, everybody's not getting married. Everyone is not engaged. Everybody is not like has a baby on the way. Like, it just was something where I just took a physical inventory of what was going on around me. And I was like, I don't know if I should be going to this service, because it seems like all the younger couples, people about to have babies, are like in this particular service. So I probably need to go to a different service. So I simply changed services and started going to like the second service, which was a good mix of people, a good mix of like younger and older, and just a good mix. So sometimes you may even have to do that. If you do have multiple services, you can go to a different service, and know that anytime you go to earlier services, it's probably going to be more just older folks who already raised kids and done all that, been there, done that, kind of deal, because it's an early service. If you have younger children, it's going to be a little more difficult to do that, particularly like if you are a single that has children. It may be a little more difficult to do something like that, go to an early service. So if you can find something that's like really in between, a mid-service, it'll be great. And these are just personal things that I did to just clear my mind, because you got to understand, you got to detox from this stuff. You have to detox from always being around it, because if you're always around this energy of that and it's affecting you in a negative way, then you have to detach and detox. So that way you can get a healthy sense, you can heal and have a healthy sense of all of this. So the next thing I did was I started going on dates with God. So instead of being so concerned about finding a boo and bae and all that, I went on dates with God. So I brought my Bible. I was working a job at the time where I went in really early, so I would get off at like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. So I would go to breakfast. And I would bring my Bible with me, and I would just read scripture and study the word and write down, summaries of what I read and how I was interpreting that. And it was such a blessing, because I just was able to spend some quiet time with God. I just had space to just relax, and it was so nice. Like when I think about that time, I'm just like, oh, that was so nice. Like just doing that and spending time with the Lord. And that's what God wants too. He wants you to spend time with him. He looks at you like, my child, like, I want you to spend time with me. You're going through something, spend time with me. You're dealing with something, spend time with me, and let me heal you. Let me deal with whatever's going on in your life. And so I spent time with God, and just, having a nice breakfast and all that. And I want to add something right here too, is that your singleness is also a ministry. And Paul the Apostle talks about this, about those that remain unmarried, that you have more time to devote to the Lord. And it's very true, because you're not concerned with like schedules and trying to, link up with your significant other, and trying to schedule stuff with children. If you don't have children, if you do have children, you already know that you got to manage everybody's schedules. Going on these dates with God and this quiet time, like they said, you may be the only Bible that somebody reads. And this is an opportunity that somebody may see you and maybe have had questions about Christianity, or just want to ask you, about your faith. And because you're there and you're available and you have no distractions, a person may muster up enough courage to come over and just ask you questions about the Bible, or ask you questions about God. And that may be something that never would happen or have happened if you weren't by yourself, reading the word, spending time with God, and being available. Because it's also about being available too, to be interrupted, to do God's will, because you don't want to have someone come up to you and then you kind of like are like, oh, I just want to spend time with God. Why is this person, no, you got to be open and say like, God is using this moment for ministry, and know that your singleness is a ministry, because as my mom told me, very wise words, somebody is always watching you. So it doesn't matter where you are, somebody is always watching you. So someone is seeing you out here spending time with the Lord. Someone is actually taking note of that. And you don't know how that may bless someone's day, but this is something that was possible because you weren't concerned with like what you have to do for the kids, what you have to do for the husband, what you have to, like, you're not divided and all over the place. And I don't want to say all over the place like you're just in chaos, but you know that it's a lot. There's a lot you have to manage. And even as a husband, like there's a lot too that goes into it, and a lot you have to manage. But at the end of the day, look at this as an opportunity. So the time that I spent with God was just amazing, and I highly just recommend doing that, and just keeping that journal where you're just taking notes of everything that you learned from the Bible, or even talking about your day. Like when I would be finished, I would just look at my notes and review my notes, and it was just such a wonderful time. So I encourage you to do that, is to date God. Right now, while you're single, date God. You'll be blessed by it. All right, so the next thing that I did is I embraced the positives of being single. This is a good one. While you're in your single season, embrace the positives and the benefits of being single. You're in this season for a reason, and I think God just wants to bless you and be such a blessing to you in this season of your life, and also see how do you respond to certain things in this season of your life. This is a period of growth and a period where you can really get to know God more and grow a deeper relationship with him, and also get to know yourself, because you don't want to go into a marriage with a lot of just baggage and a lot of things that you really should just detox from until you are ready and you're able to be in a thriving, healthy marriage. A lot of folks don't take enough time to do this, and this is why they end up in marriages that just kind of fall apart, because they're not prepared and they're not ready to deal with all the hardships that come with the marriage. Like there's a lot of beauty in marriage, but there's also a lot of hardships, and anything worth having takes work. So people aren't really preparing themselves for that, and then they end up in marriages that just don't last. So the best way for you to prepare yourself to have a healthy marriage is to study what a healthy marriage looks like. Be connected with people that have been married for like over 20, 30 years that can help you get an understanding of how to handle certain situations. But again, not too much, because you want to still enjoy your single season. And one thing about being single, well, actually a few things about being single is, one, you only have to manage one schedule, and it's only yours. You do not have to be concerned about anyone else's schedule. Unless you have children, then yes, you do have to manage your children's schedule. But if you're married with no children like myself, then it's just you. If something comes up and it kind of throws off the schedule, you don't have to be concerned about that really affecting anyone else except for you. And you can easily like adapt and do a little switcheroo and change things around, and it's good. You're all good. Even when it comes to like basic necessities like food, clothing, shelter, you only have to be concerned about yourself, and do you have enough to eat? Do you have enough warmth and comfort, and are you good? Do you have a roof over your head? Like, you don't have to have the pressure of caring for someone else too. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that in this season, you're able to really just only focus on your needs. Now, you do have to be very careful about this, because the longer you're single, you do kind of get adjusted to this kind of lifestyle, and you have to know that that's going to be something that you will have to navigate through, because now going into a relationship and being married, you're going to have to die to selfishness. That is part of being married, is dying to selfishness daily. Relationships will bring that out. Like the moment you're in a relationship and it's a serious relationship, it's going to reveal certain things that are single habits. Like, I know for my last relationship, there were certain things that I didn't realize were like single people habits that I was doing, but I was doing them because that's what I've been doing. It's just things where like just certain things where I don't know. It's hard to explain, because you don't realize it till you're in the situation, and you don't realize it till you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess like I didn't think about it that way. Like I just so used to only being concerned about what I want and what I need. So while you're in this season of singleness, this is a time for you to fully embrace it. Fully embrace it. I know some other people might be like, yeah, girl, you forgot, when you married, you got to share the bed, and now you get to just have a bed all to yourself, hug those sheets, like enjoy sleeping and not having somebody else's energy or body heat next to you. I know there's plenty of things that you can find as far as being single, and things that like you're going to enjoy. The most important benefit out of all of them is also the fact that you can devote more time to the Lord and ministry and just your connection with God and with the Lord. That is the biggest one. And not even just that, like just personal growth. I mean, you can learn new skills. You can learn how to handle your finances better, which is a big one. Handling your finances better. Take time to invest. Take time to start a business if you haven't started a business. There's so many things that you could do, and just meeting new people, traveling to different places, and you never know who you'll meet, and you never know what kind of relationships will come out of that. So I did want to go to the scriptures really quickly so I could read the passage where Paul the Apostle talks about just your singleness and being able to devote more time to the Lord. Let's go. So it's going to be 1 Corinthians 7, and it is, all right, 1 Corinthians 7:30. So, happiness and sadness or wealth should not keep anyone from doing God's work. Those in frequent contact with the things of the world should make good use of them without becoming attached to them. For this world and all it contains will pass away. In everything you do, I want you to be free from the concerns of this life. An unmarried man can spend his time doing the Lord's work and thinking how to please him. But a married man can't do that so well. He has to think about his earthly responsibilities and how to please his wife. His interests are divided. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be more devoted to the Lord in body and in spirit, while a married woman must be concerned about her earthly responsibilities and how to please her husband. I am saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. I want you to do whatever will help you serve the Lord best, with as few distractions as possible. But if a man thinks he ought to marry his fiancée because he has trouble controlling his passions and time is passing, it is all right. It is not a sin. Let them marry. But if he has decided firmly not to marry and there is no urgency and he can control his passion, he does well not to marry. So the person who marries does well, and the person who doesn't marry does even better. So I want to talk about this particular passage because I think a lot of people misinterpret it and they get it wrong, and they think like Paul is down in marriage and saying it's bad. No, he clearly says it's not bad. Even if he said something like that, that would totally go against the word of God, because the Old Testament says he who finds a wife findeth a good thing. So what Paul is talking about is your devotion to Christ, and that when you're married, your interests are divided. Like he said, there's a lot of earthly things that you have to be concerned about and worried about, because you are in something that is a natural and spiritual union. So it's not to say don't get married. It's just saying that just keep in mind, of course, when you are single, you can devote more of your time to a lot of these things. Any married person will tell you that yes, it is different when now you have a lot of other obligations. But marriage is beautiful, and marriage is something created by God, and it is meant to be something that not only is like a worship to God, but edifying God, and also something where it's God's love being reflected through you and your spouse. And that's the whole point of this marriage. And to be honest, I'm gonna drop some knowledge on y'all real quick. Our relationship with Christ is a model example of what marriage is. If you think about it, it's really setting us up for that, because we are considered the bride of Christ. And what do we have to do in our relationship every single day in this Christian walk. Die to ourselves, die to selfishness, die to certain things of the flesh. That is part of what we're supposed to do in our walk with Christ. And you have to think, wow, why would God set it up that way? Well, because it's actually preparing you for a marriage. It's preparing you for that. If that's something that you definitely desire, depending on how well you're doing in your relationship with the Lord, are you really letting him be Lord in your life? Are you really letting him speak into your life and consulting the Lord about everything and praying about certain decisions before you make them, and really being led by the guidance of the Holy Spirit? Because that's trusting, having to put trust into another entity, and really know that like he's not going to let you down. He's going to lead you in the right direction. And so a lot of these things, and a lot of some of the things that we do in just like our relationship with Christ, again, these are some of the same principles and the same practices we have to do in a marriage. But the added benefit of a marriage is sex. That God created sex as a gift for marriage. I love what Tamara Mowry said, that sex is basically icing, not the cake. And I totally agree with that, because here's a great analogy. When you're baking a cake, if you do not build that cake right, if you don't bake it right, you don't put the right ingredients, and you don't let it bake so it has a firm foundation, you go try to ice that cake, the cake's gonna fall apart, it's gonna get crumbly, and that cake does not look very appetizing. Versus if you take the time to build a strong foundation, put in the work, don't shortcut on ingredients, and have the patience and wait for that cake to just become solid and have a firm foundation, what do? You take it out. And even when you take it out, you can't ice it right away, because the icing is just going to be runny. So what you got to do is leave it, let it cool down, and then when the time is right, you now take the icing, you ice the cake, and it's a perfect cake. Take that analogy, think about it, and apply, and see how that applies to the word and how we are supposed to be as singles, and when we're dating, engaged, and then married. God wants you every stage of your life to be working on you, working on your relationship, working on with him, and working on your physical relationships, and seeing how can you make these foundations stronger. Work on these foundations so that it is not just benefiting you, but it's benefited everybody that's involved. So this is where you have to put in the work. And there's a lot of individuals who do not want to put in the work, and that's where the problem is. Anything worth having in life is going to take work. But once you see the fruits of your labor, it is going to be totally worth it. You are going to have a very long-lasting, fruitful life and fruitful relationships, a fruitful marriage, fruitful kids, because that takes some work too. But I know I went a little long in this particular segment, but I had to just get that out. So the final thing that I want to add is the final thing that I did to stop idolizing marriage was I truly gave it to God. I truly gave it to God. After stopping, all the people I was following on Instagram and the videos I was watching, and I started putting my attention in more productive things, and putting my attention in just learning new skills and just all kinds of different things that I was just learning. And I just changed what I was doing. And I said, you know what? I prayed about this. I said I gave it to God. Then that was like a year before 2019, and I said, I was praying about it, and I realized that I wasn't truly giving it to God. I was not. I kept getting in there. I kept jumping in there. I kept feeling those insecurities. I kept allowing that stuff get to me. I kept feeling like, okay, God, well, what's going on? Is there something wrong with me, or what's going? That's what that energy does, and you have to just rebuke that. You have to say, look, this is not who God called me to be. the thoughts I'm having right now, the things that are going through my head, this is not God. And you have to now get in the word, and you also have to make the practical steps. This whole list that I gave you is practical steps of how I stopped idolizing marriage. And it's like, and you have to be careful of all the things you're doing. I also want to say music and romantic movies. So if that's something, romantic movies or romantic novels, that you've kind of got caught up in that, you need to stop watching that stuff too, or listening or reading that stuff as well. But I had already put on my vision board, marriage, put a ring on there and everything. And one day after making all these adjustments, I finally was just like, God, I'm giving this to you. I'm taking my hands off of it. Because I tell you, I was trying to jump back in there, and I'd be like, okay, I trust God, but maybe I should try like online dating again or something. And I just knew my spirit was so resistant to that. And I just was like, you know what? I keep trying to gain control of this again. And you cannot say you trust God, but then you trying to like control it. It doesn't work. Because what God eventually is going to do is be like, all right, you think you know better. I'm just going to let you go wherever you want to go. I'm just going to let you make the decision you want to make. And then what happens? We end up falling flat on our face, and then we have to go back to God and say, you know what? I should have did this God's way. I should have just listened to God. I shouldn't have tried to intervene and do this, because you just knew. And we always know, but we always know that there could be a better way, but impatience drives us to do what we do. And that's really what a lot of it is. Impatience. That impatience becomes doubt. That impatience becomes disbelief. And then before you know it, you totally doubt God. You don't believe he's going to do what he's going to do, because he ain't working fast enough for you. And I know this is hard for some people to hear, particularly if you've been single for like 10 or 20 years, and you at church, and then you see somebody who just got saved like a year prior, and then they're like in a fruitful, godly relationship and about to get married, and you like, God, what's going on? Like, I done been single for like 10, 15 years. Like, what's going on, God? Like, did you forget about me or something, or what happened? So just make sure that that you're walking your walk, and know that God is going to give you what you need when you need it. And I always tell people this. I say, it is better to be older and marry the right person for you that God has sent, than to be younger and marry some clown ball that you can't wait to divorce after a year. You just can't stand them. A few months in, you couldn't even stand them. So it's just better to wait on God. Amen. So I'm going to wrap this up here. I do want to say that after doing all these things, my outlook on marriage has definitely changed. I highly encourage you to look at the realities of marriage, and actually focus on understanding what's required, and understanding what's required of you, because it's more so going to be about how you act and how you respond in the marriage, and also as the other person too, your spouse, and versus you trying to change them, or you trying to make them do something you want them to do. It doesn't work like that. My outlook now, I just see marriage as this, as an extension of your ministry. Like, I don't know if enough people understand that, is that people are watching that, particularly if you're a Christian. They're looking to see like how you two are with each other, how you treat your husband, how you treat your wife. Like, they're looking at that, and they're looking at how you're raising your kids. And I'm like, this is a ministry, like, in itself. It is a ministry. And it's not just about you and about your spouse and the kids. It's like, wow, this is, I had a ministry, one form of a ministry as a single, because again, we are the church. And then here comes another ministry as a married couple. And just a brief little story. No, I'm wrapping it up, but brief little story. One of the leaders of the singles group was talking about how one of the older couples at church, the wife gets her nails done at the same place she does. And one of the nail techs, she just, every time she comes in and her husband drops her off, like, she said, oh, I just love them. Like, when they come in here, just the way he treats her and how they are with each other, it just was so inspiring and motivating to this woman. This is a woman who's not a Christian, a woman who's seen this godly example of what a marriage truly looks like, what a healthy marriage truly looks like. And because of that, you don't, like, we don't know like what that could do. Like, we don't, you never know if like that woman is now, like, if that sparked an interest in wanting to go to church or wanting to know a little bit more about, you know, the God we serve and all of that. Like, this is what I'm talking about, is that with God, there is always a higher call. This is how it is in the kingdom of God. There's always a higher call, and there's always ways that we can just like improve on our situation, and we can elevate whatever it is that we, you know, we have our hands on. And at the same time, it glorifies God. So it's just, this is, again, I don't want to go too long on this. I don't want to go too long, but I just say, think about it, really critically think about it, and really ask God to show you the areas that you need to grow in, and show you the areas that you need to develop a little bit more before you dive into a relationship, before you dive into a marriage. Because Christian, non-Christian, this is a universal issue, is of people not doing enough self-improvement and not focusing on areas where they need to grow and becoming a better person and being healed in those areas before they jump into a relationship. So all in all, you know, my view on marriage now is that it is a ministry. It also is a worship to God. It also is about really building a legacy with someone, and it is continuing that legacy, you know, through children, through your bloodline, and really just like doing whatever you can to just make that marriage new every single day, and really building upon that marriage, because each decade it's gonna be different. Like, that's just me, never have been married. Like, that's something that I just know and just realize that like each decade it is gonna be different, because you grow older, your interests and stuff change, and the things you liked before you don't like, and now you like are into different things. So it's just a lot changes. But I just see marriage in such a healthy way now, and see it for what it really is, and not for what I wanted it to be, or for my own like selfish gain, as just be like really superficial. And I won't even say selfish, it was like superficial just to be with someone. Like, come on. So that's it. I definitely am gonna sign off for real, but definitely share this video with anyone that you feel it would greatly benefit. I always say that because I want to just give information that's just going to help you and help you in your situation, not trying to be on here just spewing a bunch of nonsense. So thank you so much for your support, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.